So before I dive into creating a new project, I will just discuss a couple things you will need to follow along. And one is going to be obvious if you're following straight along with me and you're using Rails 5.1, you can go ahead and install what is known as Webpacker. And here's the GitHub repo for it, Rails GitHub/Rails/Webpacker. It's actually ported into the Rails instance now, so you can just do Rails new app and then do a flag with Webpack. But we're going to use specifically Vue for our app in this case. So to do that, I will be raising this flag right here, Rails new app flag Webpack, and then equals Vue. So when we go ahead and create that app, which I'll do very shortly, that's what we're going to run. On top of that, we need to have this thing known as mail catcher locally. I think there's one called Mail Hog, which is basically inspired by this. But mail catcher is just a way for you to get emails locally that are sent from your local host without having to use something like Gmail and their servers and all that stuff. So to me, I find this a little easier, and it's easier to get and receive email when your app is queued and set up properly. There is some configuration with this one, so you'll want to actually get that going after we initially install the app. So let's go ahead and install the app. I'm in a brand new terminal. I'm in my blog directory, but I'm going to create a new app in this. So Rails new, I'm going to call this one just Projekt. The one that I showed you before in the previous video was called Demo Project, so demo_project. So if you're following along, make sure you look at this one. I believe both will be on GitHub, so I'll definitely link to this one in particular. So then we need to raise that flag Webpack, and then I believe it's =Vue, and for brevity, I'm just going to double check that. Yeah. So this should install Rails with Webpack and run bundle install, run yarn install at the same time. So there's quite a bit of things going on when this installs, but we'll get to what's going on in a second when it finishes. All right, with that installed, probably took you a minute or two, I don't know, quite a bit. We can cd into that directory, so Projekt, and then we have that open. I'll just do a git init and git add. Fresh app with Vue. Okay, great. So with this going on, we can basically get rolling. One thing, if you haven't already, when I showed you this page, definitely check out mailcatcher.me. What we need to do, I'll just go ahead and get this installed. I have the gem installed on my own. You can just do gem install, or just, follow the docs here. Gem install mailcatcher, run mailcatcher in that same directory. Doesn't have to be within your app directory. This is just locally on your entire system. If you get issues, you can run mailcatcher help. But other than that, we just need to add a few things to our app itself, which go into our config development environment Ruby file. So let me open my app in Sublime, and I want to make sure this is in a different desktop. This one here. Great. So this is our, I'll be referencing the other project just for the sake of not having to duplicate code and sit here and type it so many times. So this is the current old one, or the demo, and then this is the brand new one, which we'll be working in. And a big thing I want to do first is get our gems in order before I do any of the initial setup. So let me go ahead and actually just copy that from my other project. And you can do the same if you find this repo online, which you should, on GitHub. And you could just, hopefully, if you're running the exact same version of Rails as me, just install this or copy this and install it the same way. If not, make sure your versions are matching. And I'll just paste that in, and hopefully this will work. So here we have, I'll go through the gems, the main ones, the Bulma Rails, which was kind of the style framework we're using. Simple form for forms, obviously. Devise is what handles our user authentication and gives us some awesome helpers and views and stuff to handle logging in and logging out and adding new users and destroying users. Gravatar image tag is useful for just displaying a team member's profile image if they have one via gravatar.com. jQuery, I needed it for the project text area, so the big WYSIWYG thing you saw, which is what is below that, the WYSIWYG Rails. And then public activity is what basically is responsible for the activity that displays on that dashboard page I showed you in the very first video. And then below in our development group, this can go in your development and test group if you're doing tests. I am not quite into the testing yet. I should be, I know, but that's something I'm going to work on. But in this, we have better errors, guard, and guard live reload. Those are just kind of nice to haves. You don't need them in any sense. The ones that are really kind of necessary for this app are right here. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go back to my command line. I'm going to run bundle. You can run bundle install or just bundle, and it works the same way. So a few other things we'll need for our Vue.js stuff to work. And our project's set up to add any node modules already to it. You'll see them here. And that's through Webpacker, basically, that gem we added initially. And it's interesting because there's already a JavaScript directory in the assets folder, but there's a new one that gets added right here in the app folder. That's going to be all of our Vue.js stuff. And if you're new to Vue.js, it's just more or less a different way to render things on the DOM and just kind of, make it work a little more reactively. So I wanted to try my hand at it. I'm not super proficient with it yet. I'm still used to the old jQuery way, but I think I'm not alone there. A lot of people still use jQuery simply because it works, and there's no harm in that. So don't feel like you have to learn the latest and greatest stuff, because even though you can, doesn't mean it's the best fit for your app. Anyway, we'll be creating a new file in here just named after our project, and we'll import that when we create teams and whatnot. But that's just a directory to show you what's going on there. We still have to generate all of our models and stuff, so that's to come. But I wanted to add a few node modules that we'll need coming up. I'm going to just get that out of the way. So one is going to be yarn, add Vue turbolinks. We may or may not need this one. I'm not sure. I'm going to go ahead and add it though. And one more will be yarn, add Vue resource. Okay, so with that installed, we can kind of get rolling in this case. So we have our app ready. There's no functionality yet. We can run Rails server and see what's up and probably get just a welcome screen if we're lucky. So I'll just open localhost 3000 here, and yay, you're on Rails. Cool. So I'm on Ruby 2.4. I think 2.5 just released, or it's going to be released, and then Rails 5.14. So I'm going to keep this mail tab open. Any mail that we end up getting sent will be sent to this tab, and we can just check it from here. So that's what that is. In this case, we can go ahead and begin. So I'm going to create first a home controller just to get our initial setup for Devise and all that stuff in order. I'm going to kill this app, and let's get Simple Form installed. We'll just go find it. How about that? Simple Form gem. All right, so I have this gem installed. We ran bundle install before. We can just go ahead and run their generator. Just do that. It'll tell you if you want to use Bootstrap or Zerb, you can throw a flag behind it and use those. I don't like those in this case, or I don't want to use them. So we should be set up there. Go ahead and do what's next. Devise? Maybe we can do Devise, yeah. And I'll actually, real quick, I already know I need to do this, is I've downloaded the Bulma Rails gem. I need to change this. You can leave the CSS and just put SCSS if you want. It's kind of a thing. And do an @import Bulma. So that's set up. And we'll do Devise next. There's going to be quite a bit of setup with Devise since we're going to kind of tweak the way users sign up. But I'm going to just initially install it and then we'll tweak it afterwards. So let's run their generator. And it's going to give you, it's going to throw back a list of things to do, which we will. Looks like I already have an initializer. So trash current config. Let me double check what's going on there. All right, I had some weird issues with my system when I was trying to install the Devise on Projekt here, but I finally got it to work, and I did the install that comes on the repo. If you're following along the repo, this will be like the first thing you run, and then it'll spit out all this stuff that we need to add to our app. So I'm going to go ahead and add this port as our mailer, default mailer. So I'm going to cut that off. We're in the wrong project though. I'm going to go back to our new project. There it is. And go to config, environments, development, very bottom, wherever really. It can go here. And it's configured to use that port, only we're going to make a change there because it's going to require the mail catcher version, which is what we installed in the previous video. If you haven't already, you probably should install that. Or we didn't, I don't know that I installed in the previous video, but I talked about it. But you can install it, run those steps to install it. But initially on that page, if you go to mailcatcher.me, there is a Rails setup guide. Basically, we want a SMTP delivery method here. So you want to pin this to that file as well. So we want our port to be 3000, our SMT delivery method, SMTP to be the delivery method, and our settings to be 1025. That's the port that Mailcatcher runs on. So just to verify though, I will check my other project. I don't want to tell you guys wrong. So let me see what's going on there. It should be the same. Yeah, I am going to change the order up just in case though. So we'll go back and put localhost 3000 last. Okay. Cool. So with that in place, our mailing system is already set up. I already have Mailcatcher running, and to run it, you can just type Mailcatcher in the terminal anywhere in your system, and it should fire up. Next, with Devise, it gave us a little list of things to do. Production. Let's set a route to home index. We need to still do that. Generate a controller for home. So I'm going to do that after I complete this. For Rails, I'm going to generate a views, so I can just actually keep in that window and just generate those views. It's going to give the default ones by default, but we will need to modify those to play nice with Bulma, and you can either copy those straight from the repo or I guess follow an earlier tutorial I had. It's really just mundane stuff. I'm basically stripping away elements from the forms and adding specific classes so they look nice. Those get generated and put in our views folder, in our app folder, and those are all those right there. And the nice thing though, since I installed Simple Form first, which I really recommend, it goes ahead and adds that as the basic form builder in this sense. So if you didn't do that, it would use the default Rails stuff, which isn't bad, but Simple Form is a little easier to understand, a little more easier to extend. It's up to you what you want to do. Either way, they both still work. So with that ready, I will go ahead and just probably copy my basic layout file over from the old one because it's really not that different. So let me go back to our old project, this screen, if I can find it. Here it is. Close up some of this stuff. Go to app, views, layouts, and application. And this stuff is mainly just user related stuff, new team, new project. That stuff I'll have to like comment out just so it's not going to wreck our project since we don't have that type of modeling yet. But I'll go back to this project and just paste it in for now. Comment those out. If you've been following along, some of these link tos are probably familiar. Just they come with Devise by default. When you run Devise, it generates these paths and you get these little URL helpers to those paths. So in this case, that's already set up. Here we're including something we'll need later on. I probably jumped the gun here, but just to make it a little more clear, since we're using Webpack, it's got this new JavaScript directory in our Rails app now. And to import a file from that directory, you can use a JavaScript pack tag. So it gives you a nice helper to go ahead and do that. I've included a custom one that goes below our other JavaScript. It doesn't exist yet because we still need to create it, but I'm going to just comment that out for now as well, just so we don't get any errors. And we might get errors for the root path. I don't think we have a root path set up yet, but we need to generate. In fact, I'll just comment that one in this end tag. And we need to generate basically our first controller. I think I'm going to comment this out too. In this, there's just a bunch of stuff that would just wreck our app. So comment anything that's Ruby out if you're following. Besides those are by default. So here we're pulling in Font Awesome. So it's an extension to our Bulma app, which we imported earlier in our style sheet right there. Great. So that should be all set and square. We're kind of already, I mean, it's not going to show yet because we don't have a route set up. I don't have the server running, but let's go ahead and generate a controller. Rails generate controller. Just call it home. And I only really want an index on this one. So an index action. Great. So when you run a generator like that, it creates other files for you, like helpers. If you need any helpers for this specific controller, you can have them. Same with assets if you want to run specific dependent assets on this view. Rails is smart enough to know, that those things apply to this page only. So it's kind of nice. I don't really need this stuff because I'm going to use just kind of a global style. But, if you want to separate concerns, it's certainly possible. Okay, so with that generated, we have a controller now called home controller with index, and we can route to that index now. So first I'm going to add it's going to have some consonant in there. That's enough for now. We'll go back in and fix that up. But I'm going to go to our config routes, and then it's going to say get home/index. I don't really want that. I want root home and then the index action. So we need that hashtag in there to represent the action. Great. So whenever you modify the routes file, if you're running your server, make sure you restart it, and you can hit Control-C to do that. I'm not even running it yet, so I'm going to just actually run it. If I can type booted, and we should be okay. If it routes to that, we should just see that text. You are in home or index HTML or something. There we go. So we got our stuff up here. That will appear better once we have the link to root path, which we can update now since we have a root path. So I can go ahead and uncomment this block. And hopefully it's all good there. There we go. So one thing I forgot to do though is run guard in another tab, so we can I have the gem installed. I still need to do an initializer for it. So I'm going to go to my actual project. This one. And we can do, what is it, guard? I can't remember now. This is the worst part about web development, I swear. Guard live reload. It's just going to create a file by default that'll just kick ass for us and let us refresh the browser. Guard init live. That was hard. So let's add that. I thought it was at Rails generation. And it might throw a warning back. Don't worry about it. Great, so we have it set up. We can just run guard in, say, a new tab. So bundle exec guard. And we need to run bundle exec so our dependencies are met while we're doing this stuff. So it's watching that project folder now, right there. Now, on top of that, you do need live reload installed on your browser. So if you're using Safari or Chrome or Firefox, there are extensions. I have one set up right here. You just click it to connect and it will show it's connected there and also here. So that's kind of an indication. Okay, great. So now if I were to update this index stuff, it'll update in real time, probably before I can even get back to it, which is perfect. Okay, so we have a route set up and we have a home controller. I'm gonna go ahead and wait on that part. We have Devise set up too. I'm gonna go ahead and swap those views over real quick from my old project just to show you how it looks in the end, because right now it's gonna look crummy, and we can do that by going to that project first. This one here. And realistically, I could just copy this entire folder. I feel like I should, but I think I'll just go file by file. So yours will not have a confirmation show file yet. We can create one though. We'll need it later. So I'm gonna go ahead and create it now. And that's basically, it's a turn on, turn off toggle, so to speak. So if you do confirmations with Devise, it needs a show page to show the extra form for the password. That if you watch the first intro video, that's kind of where I went after I accepted or confirmed my email address. So that's something that's necessary. So I'm going to do a new file here called show. I'm just putting this here just to have it. It's not going to wreck anything yet, I don't think. So we got that set up, confirmations, great. We need, the mailer is the stuff that actually gets sent to you, so you can modify these to your liking. Emails are tough, so definitely keep them simple as possible. Passwords, you can see all the markup that isn't here versus what I have over here, which is quite a bit. So edit, I'm probably gonna fast forward through this, so if you don't see this, go ahead and copy from the repo. Okay, so I have the views copied over. Now I need to actually generate a model that our Devise instance will utilize. So I'm gonna create yet another tab, increase the size here for you guys. Go to WebCrunch project, and we need to run Rails generate G, whichever, Devise user, and user is going to be my model, and it should generate the model for us, which is great. And it adds a new route called Devise for users, which we'll need. So it creates a migration as well, and in this migration you could see a ton of stuff that gets added. And a neat thing you can do, if you went too far already and ran that migration, there's another method to adding a confirmation step to the process, or like you can later add a migration to do that. In this case, you'll see that these are commented out. I'm gonna go ahead and add these, and those by default will be what we need. If you can basically have this as a setting if you want reconfirmable. So if someone confirms once, they can confirm again. I don't really want that. It really doesn't appeal to me. So I'm going to save this, uncomment those lines, and then run our migration. And then there's another step we'll need to do. So after that, you can run Rails DB migrate or rake DB migrate. Rake I'm very used to. And it should run that. So it created those in our schema. Now, if you look here, we'll have a users table with all of those things on it, which is what we want. Great. So one more step I want to do is add some configuration to our model, our Devise install. So config, initializers, Devise. And here there's some settings you can dictate, and the main one you definitely want to change is the email it's coming from. It's like the default mail sender. So here I'll just put like no reply at projekt.com, something like that. You can also adjust what actual mailers are used. Devise is so cool in the sense that you can tweak for days and have things just work the way you want. There's tons of settings. Definitely read this stuff if you're interested in figuring out what the hell they do, because there's a lot. And some stuff you just really won't honestly know what it is. So I'm going to reference my other init file just to make sure I didn't screw something up here. So I think I only changed a couple things because I needed to do a little bit of workaround to get what we're going for to work. And I think it was reconfirmable needs to be false, which I just saw it's true. And what else? Did I change anything else? I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's it. So out of the box, you don't really need much of this stuff, but it is helpful if you do extend Devise to do a lot more, like OmniAuth. Like if you want to sign in with GitHub or Twitter or something like that, you'll need to kind of edit some of this stuff to work with it. Okay, I think that's enough for Devise. We have our user model generated now, and it's got all of these set up. One thing we do need is these ones here are commented out, and they're adapters that can extend Devise. And the one we really want to use on our case here is confirmable. So in our demo app, it was the process of inviting users to a team, and when they get invited, they need to confirm their email. And then from there, they can redirect to the app and enter the password and create an account. So that's kind of what Devise helps with. And we'll go ahead and close that. Our routes are also set up, so we'll need to restart our server, of course, but this is what they look like at the moment. And something with Devise I like to do is add a name to the user account. So I think I'll do that and then call this video done, because it's already at about 20 minutes or so. So our main routes is going to be what you see there, but then we want controllers. We want to define some custom controllers. And in this case, we've done this one before. It's called registrations. If you're following along my little series here. And that'll go to a registrations controller. And then new in this series is confirmations. So I'm going to add that one as well. So we have our root, we have Devise for users, and then we'll need to actually do kind of a workaround route to get the confirmation set up in the way we want. So I'm just going to add this now. It's probably not going to make a ton of sense. And honestly, it doesn't a ton to me either, but it's just the way this needs to extend this confirmations thing to work. So what this does is basically when we we're creating this route that when a user confirms their account, they're sent to this action, and then it's updated via, I spelled that wrong. That would have been a bad patch. So you're patching an already existing account and adding their extended details to it. So basically you create the account with a username and email, or name and email in this case, and go ahead and send that when you invite a user, and then the password gets generated and extended to it later. Lots of stuff going on. So the controller, first we need to create a registrations controller. And this one's going to have stuff we've had before. In the repo live, you may see a link to the blog post I referenced for this one. Saved my butt quite a few times. Registrations controller. It extends from the Devise registrations. So we're creating a class. And inside this, two little private methods that are going to basically allow us to add a field to our sign up process. Sign up params. Nope. And we'll want to have params that require user.permit name. The name field right there is what we want to add. Email and anything else coming is already associated with the account, so we didn't create these. Devise did. Account update. User, and then we need a permit. So this is if a user updates, of course. Name, email, password confirmation, and then current password. So if you edit your account, this is what's going on. And this is Rails being secure, so this stuff requiring for this model is allowing only these things to come through when you do submit a form. So that's just Rails safeguarding you from getting stuff injected into a form that shouldn't. Okay, so that's our registrations controller. It's really all we need. At this point, I have already in those views a name field. So I saved us some time there. Like on the registration one, we have a name and email. And typically you would have a password and password confirmation here too, but we're approaching this differently and just want it to be confirmable. So when the person creates their account, they get an email first in order to proceed. Lastly, I'm going to create a confirmations controller, which is going to have a ton of stuff in it that honestly I'm not 100% sure on, but I did find it on the Devise repo. So I definitely referenced there. I'll try to link to it. If I don't, definitely check my file out, and you can go ahead and copy it because it's just a lot that has to get added to make this work. Controller. I'm just going to kind of type this out, speed it up maybe, and you guys can follow along slowly if you like. So to save time, I'm just going to actually copy from my other project since I copied Devise's repo. It's all of this code right here. It's just a lot. So I'm going to, so I don't make mistakes live, I will just do this. And I'll try to talk through this, but essentially if you follow along and find this code online, it's going to have these uncommented. Go ahead and comment those out. You don't really need to. And in our case, you can just try to have before filters, but they don't really exist in Rails 5.1 now. So you can just do a before action and do this, but even that still kind of throws some bugs for me. So fair warning if you want those. I don't know that you need them though. So to update, it'll go through confirmable definition here. It checks if there's no password. It goes to set the password using their user params. And if it's valid and confirmable, password match, then allow the user to confirm, else show them the confirmable errors. We don't want to render the new template. And then you add this stuff. It's saying it's already set. If there's empty errors and it's not confirmable, it'll go to confirmations new, which is exactly what we want. That is in our views, confirmations new. And this will have the confirmation token and then all the other stuff we need, which is just the email. Basically just saying resend the confirmation to me. The show page happens. This is going to be the one that has our password fields, and you only get to this page once you have that link in your email. So all this stuff is like, I'm sure it might not be over your head. If it is, don't feel scared, because I am too. Like, this stuff's a little out of my element, but I found it online, and like many other things, it seems to work. So I'm going to roll with it. And it's actually working with this app. All right, so with that set up, our users should be pretty much ready. One thing we do need to add still to our user is a team ID field. That I just know I need that because it's going to help me associate a user to a team, and it creates a column in a sense. So let's add that next. Let's first maybe check our work here. I'm going to go and run, I'm going to go back to our application layout, go to File, App, Models, Review, Layout. Just make sure this stuff is working, and then we'll call this video done once I get it up and running here. Oh, we want those going still. Count, that should be good. Also good. If all goes right, I should be able to update. Looks like I have a wrong end tag. Let's see if is Rails running? It is running, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and restart this just because I've been working a while and change some routes, so just to make sure. Probably throw another error, but we'll see. If it doesn't, that's cool. So it looks like I'm missing one on the application. If user signed in, oh, I am. There we go. Should see our front page now. Great. So it's basically checking here in this whole block. If I'm signed in, show this stuff. Otherwise, show these two links. So if you're signed in, you'll see a log out and an account button with the drop down to create new stuff and our actual account info. So since we aren't logged in, that won't really show yet. So we just have these links. So you can sign up. Looks like we have something up here. Okay. I still need to create a record in our users table that is of the name. So we still need to add that field to our database. Currently it doesn't exist, and I'll show you. You can kind of just look in your schema to see that. So we have users, we only have the email. We need a name. So I'm going to add a migration to that. Clear this. So it'll be Rails generate migration, add name to users, and we'll just pass in a name. It'll be a string, so you'll pass in the data type with the name of the data column. Oh, I have to say Rails generate migration shun, remember to type that, add name to users, name string. Okay, cool. So if I go to that file, just to show you, we're adding to the users column the name and string of string type. So I'll just go ahead and do rake db migrate. Done. Great. While I'm at it, I know I need a team ID on my user account or user column table. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. So migration and team ID to users team underscore ID. This is just establishing a relation, so we can go, once we generate all of our models, I can target a user through a team in a sense. So this stuff's, it's kind of takes some critical thinking, but it does make sense in the end once you put the piece of the puzzles together. It's kind of like Lego blocks. Okay, so we're using the type of integer here. I just want it to be an ID, so it needs to just be a number. So I'll run that, and we'll double check that file. So here it's adding team ID of the type integer to users, and I'll run that migration. Or yeah, you can type Rails or rake at that point. It used to be only rake, now Rails with 5.0 I think is the new one that allows you to do that. So at this point we should be able to load this page since we have that field. We do. So just to test my theory here, I'm going to try to sign up. Maybe I'll just use like a test name. We can enter validations later, something of which I haven't honestly spoke of yet, so that will come. Okay, we've got problems. What are the problems? One method I did find, I basically Googled this in my old demo project, is a nice little helper. I think it was a helper. Or what was it? A concern? Yeah, log validation errors. So in your models directory, there's a folder called concerns. And this kind of helps you log stuff in your terminal when you run into errors. So I'm going to go ahead and add this just for fun and see if we can pinpoint really what's going on. It'll kind of give you an inclination of what's happening. What was the name of that file? Log validation errors. Okay. So log validation. And this won't be anything we need to keep in the app later on, but I found this that basically just debugs actual error messages when we run into them. We'll run that, and you need to include it on the model you're working with. So I'm going to go to user. I think I did. So it was, I can't quite remember what it was. Let's try include. If it tells me, it'll totally tell me if it's wrong. Let's refresh. Routing error, get user. Users doesn't exist, so we need to go back to the root path, sign up, and see what happens in our terminal. Maybe I can just do test at email.com. So it'll say that, but what does it say here? Password can't be blank. And why is that? Well, guys, this video is running long, so I hate to end it like that, but so far we have everything pretty much set up. There's a little bit error coming along with us that's saying there should be a password here, but I have this set up to not use it, so I'm curious what's up with that. But I'm going to diagnose that and get back to you in the very next video, so I will see you then.